The Cleveland Browns are trying to sell a BS story that Shedeur Sanders is injured and therefore unable to play in the next game, the next preseason game, after he had that outbreak or that breaking out party where everybody was like, see, Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback. He looked like a first-round pick out there in the last game, and the hype on the internet went crazy. And because of that, I believe the Cleveland Browns said, we got to slow some of this down.
The NFL is facing a problem it never wanted to admit. Rumors surrounding Shedeur Sanders' injury have shaken the league so badly that fans are already talking boycott. A rookie quarterback who was supposed to be the centerpiece of Cleveland's rebuild and one of the NFL's biggest marketing pushes is suddenly sidelined, and the ripple effects are immediate. From ticket sales plummeting to viewership dipping after his debut, the panic isn't just inside the Browns' locker room, it's spreading across the league offices that had banked on Sanders as a ratings guarantee. The numbers tell the story before the statements from coaches or the reports from beat writers ever do. When Shedeur Sanders made his preseason debut for the Cleveland Browns on August 8th, TV ratings in the Cleveland market jumped by 29% compared to the same slot a year ago, according to Nielsen tracking. Nationally, the broadcast averaged 6.4 million viewers, a number that outpaced even some regular season games from the previous year. Those figures set the tone for what the league expected. Sanders wasn't just another rookie quarterback. He was being positioned as the ratings anchor of a new NFL storyline, the kind of player who could move numbers the way a college star might lift bowl game attendance. That's why the fallout when the injury news broke hit so hard. The details came out quietly at first. An oblique strain suffered during practice on August 13th, with initial reports describing Sanders as day-to-day, but the context mattered more than the language. In his very first week working exclusively with the Browns' first-team offense, Sanders missed more than 40% of scheduled reps. For a veteran quarterback, those snaps might not be season-defining. For a rookie quarterback being asked to lead a franchise that has cycled through starters for the better part of 2 decades, those reps were critical. Cleveland had structured camp to give Sanders as much exposure as possible, treating every live snap as a development window. Missing those days wasn't just a minor setback, it altered the plan entirely. The consequences showed up almost immediately in the business world. Ticket resale markets that had seen opening day prices in Cleveland hover near $300 dropped back under $200 in the span of 48 hours once Sanders was ruled out of team drills. Secondary sellers on StubHub and SeatGeek noted that demand dipped by nearly a third compared to the week prior, a direct reflection of fan uncertainty. For a franchise that had been struggling to keep sellouts consistent in the post-Baker Mayfield era, Sanders represented not just hope on the field, but financial stability off it. Losing that momentum just weeks before the season wasn't what anyone in Cleveland or New York at NFL headquarters wanted to see. The national betting market mirrored the same sentiment. Sportsbooks reported a 42% decline in Browns-related prop bets during the week following Sanders' injury update. Even more telling, wagers on Sanders-specific stat lines, such as passing yards and touchdowns for the opener, nearly evaporated. FanDuel and DraftKings both confirmed that Browns-related handle shrank significantly compared to other rookie-led franchises like Chicago with Caleb Williams. That kind of shift doesn't happen unless the betting public senses instability, and in this case, it was tied to one player's health. Inside the Browns facility, coaches weren't panicking publicly, but the math was unavoidable. Losing nearly half a week of first-team reps meant Sanders missed more than 60 live throws with starting receivers, around 25 red zone snaps, and multiple situational installs that had been built around his dual-threat mobility. Kevin Stefanski admitted as much when pressed, noting that the offense had to reallocate snaps and adapt on the fly. Those phrases may sound benign, but for analysts tracking development curves, they signal disruption. Every day, a rookie quarterback isn't throwing against a live NFL defense is a day lost in narrowing the gap between college speed and professional speed. What makes the situation more volatile is the league's broader investment in Sanders. The NFL had leaned heavily on his debut as part of its preseason marketing campaign. National promos highlighted Sanders as a centerpiece of the new wave, aligning him alongside names like Williams and Drake May. Networks didn't hide the fact that Sanders drove ratings. Amazon Prime, which carried the Browns' preseason opener, reported reported a 34% spike in streaming numbers compared to its average for the same week last year. Those are not minor fluctuations, they're market-shifting metrics that advertisers pay attention to. When Sanders went down, advertisers asked questions about what his absence meant for upcoming slots. For a league that guards its revenue streams as carefully as its competitive balance, those questions carried weight. Fan sentiment added another layer. Within hours of the injury update, hashtags like #BOYCOTT and Protect Shedeur began trending regionally on Twitter and TikTok. While social media outrage doesn't always translate into tangible action, it does reflect mood, and the mood among younger fans, particularly those who had followed Sanders from Colorado, was frustration. They felt the NFL had overexposed him too quickly, putting too much weight on a rookie's shoulders. Some claimed they wouldn't watch until Sanders returned to full strength, a statement that might not move national ratings immediately, but does pose long-term concerns about how sustainable the league's push for new stars really is. Financial analysts who track franchise valuations also picked up on the shift. The Browns had projected a 12% increase in game day revenue year over year, a jump tied directly to Sanders' debut and expected performance. Concessions, merchandise sales, and parking were all forecasted to benefit from higher attendance. But with ticket demand dipping and merchandise sales slowing after the injury announcement, those projections already look shaky. Fanatics, the NFL's official merchandiser, reported that Sanders' jersey, and which had been the #2 rookie seller behind Caleb Williams in July, slid out of the top 5 during the week following his injury. That decline, even if temporary, illustrates just how quickly hype-driven demand can collapse when health questions arise. The deeper issue isn't just about numbers, it's about narrative control. The NFL has long relied on creating storylines around young quarterbacks to sustain interest across casual audiences. Sanders was positioned as not only Cleveland's savior, but as one of the few rookies who could bridge demographics, appealing to college football fans who watched his rise at Colorado and to NFL fans eager for a new storyline outside the usual power markets. That's why the injury didn't just stall a development arc, it fractured a narrative the league had been counting on. And once narratives crack, fans often disengage. What comes next for Cleveland is complicated. The Browns have Jacoby Brissett as a veteran stopgap, but the franchise made it clear Sanders was QB1 from the moment he walked into camp. Going back to a backup doesn't just change game plans, it alters ticket demand and fan confidence. Local radio stations in Cleveland have already reported a spike in call-ins expressing frustration, with some fans questioning whether they should hold off on season ticket purchases until Sanders proves durable. That's not the reaction a front office wants after investing millions into rebranding around a single rookie. The NFL's panic then isn't irrational, it's grounded in data. Viewership dipped by millions once Sanders left the spotlight. Ticket resale markets collapsed by nearly a third in less than a week. Merchandise slowed, sportsbooks adjusted odds, and saw bets dry up. Fan sentiment online turned sour. These aren't abstract consequences, they're measurable. And while Sanders himself may only miss a short window, the damage to momentum is already underway. For a league that prides itself on being bigger than any one player, the Sanders situation is a reminder that sometimes the hype around one rookie really can tilt the scales of business, ratings, and fan loyalty. Why this moment matters more than the simple description of an oblique strain is the intersection between lost development and lost business. For Shedeur Sanders, the reality is clear. Every rep missed in August translates into rust that can linger well into September. Quarterbacks don't just absorb schemes from playbooks, they build timing with receivers through live action. By missing nearly half of his scheduled first-team reps in that first full week with the starters, Sanders has fallen behind by what analysts estimate to be the equivalent of 2 preseason games worth of live reps. When you compare that to other rookies, the difference is stark. Caleb Williams in Chicago, for instance, has logged nearly 90% of his scheduled first-team reps through 2 weeks, putting him almost 120 live throws ahead of Sanders. In a league where margins are measured in inches and split seconds, that discrepancy isn't minor, it's measurable, and it's consequential. The Browns as a team feel that ripple immediately. Head coach Kevin Stefanski designed this camp to essentially fast-track Sanders into not just the starter role, but the centerpiece of the entire offensive identity. Unlike Mahomes, who who sat a year behind Alex Smith or Lamar Jackson, who split rookie snaps with Joe Flacco, Sanders isn't afforded the luxury of time. The Browns committed to him from day one. Missing these reps forces Stefanski to divert time into adjusting packages for Brissett, meaning the offense is effectively split between two approaches, one tailored for Sanders' mobility and arm talent, and another pared down for a veteran backup. That kind of split focus is costly in a training camp window that is already tight. For every day Brissett runs the huddle, Sanders loses a layer of chemistry with his receivers. The numbers around chemistry are easy to miss, but devastating in practice. When quarterbacks and wideouts build connections, it isn't about highlight plays. It's about the subtle timing on slants, outs, and option routes. Sanders had just begun developing that rhythm with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore before the injury. Based on practice logs, he had completed 72% of his red zone throws with Cooper in joint sessions. Once he sat out, those reps vanished. By comparison, Trevor Lawrence in his rookie year had over 120 live red zone reps logged before the first preseason game. Sanders will barely crack half of that number now, which means when September comes, those throws are happening under live game pressure rather than in controlled practice environments. That increases the risk of turnovers, drive stalls, and lost points. And in a division as tight as the AFC North, those margins define seasons. From the league's perspective, the consequences are magnified by the way Sanders has been marketed. The NFL has spent the last decade struggling to elevate fresh stars in small or mid-tier markets. Cleveland has rarely been treated as a ratings anchor, but Sanders gave them that shot. League promos on NFL Network, ESPN, and Amazon all leaned on Sanders' face to sell preseason packages. Advertisers bought in based on projected viewership bumps tied to his presence. Now, the reality is a dip. In markets like Columbus and Denver, both strongholds for Sanders' college fan base, local ratings fell by nearly 18% the week after his injury, a sharp contrast from the surge during his debut. That matters to the league because it signals not just casual drop-off, but disengagement from the exact demographics they had hoped to capture. Why fans react this way comes down to trust. Sanders was pitched as not just a Browns quarterback, but as a continuation of the story that made college football headlines every week last fall. His games at Colorado pulled in over 7 million viewers on average, rivaling major NFL broadcasts. That audience was expected to follow him to Sundays. When he's suddenly sidelined, those fans feel as though they were sold a product the league couldn't deliver. It's not a minor gap, it's a breach of expectation, and when fans feel shortchanged, the backlash isn't theoretical, it's reflected in the data. You can see it in jersey sales. In the week before his injury, Sanders was averaging over 2,500 jersey units sold per day through Fanatics, placing him just behind Caleb Williams. The week after, those numbers fell by 38%, dropping him below rookies like Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. That may not sound catastrophic, but the math adds up. Over a full month, that's a loss of more than 30,000 units, or nearly $3 million in retail revenue. The NFL doesn't take those kinds of declines lightly, especially not when they're tied to a single player who was supposed to represent the new wave of marketable stars. Inside the Browns locker room, the matter is less about jerseys and more about leadership. Sanders had been handed the huddle by veterans who understood the franchise's investment in him, but leadership in football isn't handed out in marketing meetings. It's earned in live reps, in the grind of camp. Every day he sits on the sideline, that authority erodes slightly. Teammates see Brissett running the offense. They see adjustments being made to fit a veteran's skill set. That doesn't mean Sanders loses the job, but it does mean the confidence his teammates build in him is delayed. Delays compound, and by the time week 1 arrives, those missed windows could create hesitation. In football, hesitation kills drives. Financially, the Browns have already started to feel the pinch. Team executives projected that their first 3 home games would sell out based largely on Sanders' presence. With the injury news, resale ticket prices dropped from an average of $289 for the opener to $186. That's not just a number for fans, it's a revenue gap for the franchise. Multiply that by 20,000 seats on the resale market, and you're looking at more than $2 million in lost secondary revenue in just one game. Add in concessions concessions and parking, and the ripple grows. By the league's estimates, the Browns could lose upwards of $5 million in projected revenue if Sanders' absence lingers beyond preseason. Why does that matter for the NFL at large? Because it creates precedent. When Andrew Luck was injured early in his career, the Colts suffered locally, but the league as a whole still leaned on established stars like Brady, Manning, and Rodgers to carry national ratings. Today, the NFL is in a different era. Brady is gone, Rodgers is aging, and the league desperately needs young quarterbacks to anchor broadcast slots. Sanders, with his college stardom and crossover appeal, was supposed to be one of those anchors. If his momentum stalls, the NFL is left scrambling to repackage rookie hype around Williams alone, which isn't the balanced marketing plan they intended. The betting market offers another clear indicator of why this matters now. In the week leading up to Sanders' injury, sportsbooks had listed the Browns' playoff odds at plus 340. After the injury, that line shifted to plus 420. It may not seem like much, but those are sharp market movements triggered not by preseason game results, but by practice reports. When a rookie's health moves betting lines in August, it tells you all you need to know about his perceived value. Even fantasy football platforms reflect this. Sanders' average draft position slid from the 11th round to the 14th within days, signaling that fans were already bracing for missed time. Fantasy numbers might not impact the scoreboard, but they do impact engagement, which is one of the NFL's most valuable assets. This moment matters because it's not just about a single injury. It's about exposure, expectation, and economics. Sanders isn't being treated like a rookie quarterback in the development phase. He's being treated like a franchise cornerstone and a national marketing chip. The NFL built August around him, and Cleveland staked September on him. Now, with just a few days of missed reps, both plans are in jeopardy. Fans sense it, sponsors sense it, analysts sense it, and the league, quietly, is panicking not because of what Sanders has done, but because of what he hasn't been able to do. Throw passes, sell tickets, and keep momentum alive. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, Shedeur Sanders' injury doesn't exist in a vacuum. The NFL has seen rookie quarterbacks stumble before, whether through health setbacks or early season struggles. But what makes Sanders' case unique is how quickly his absence triggered measurable fallout across ratings, ticket sales, and business streams. To understand just how severe this is, you have to line it up against historical examples, cases where quarterbacks either missed time or carried heavy hype into their debuts, and measure the differences. The first and most obvious parallel is Robert Griffin III in 2012. RG3 entered Washington as one of the most hyped rookies in recent memory, bringing both a Heisman pedigree and a game-breaking dual-threat style. His rookie debut drew over 7.6 million viewers on Fox, one of the most-watched Week 1 rookie games of that era. But when he suffered knee issues later in the season, ratings for Washington games dipped by nearly 22% compared to the weeks he was active. Attendance followed the same pattern, with FedEx Field sellouts early in the year turning into swaths of empty seats by December. Sanders' trajectory is similar in scale. Cleveland's preseason opener had that same jolt of energy, with TV ratings up 29% locally, only for demand to collapse once injury updates surfaced. The difference is timing. RG3 got hurt mid-season after already proving his appeal. Sanders barely had a week to establish himself before fans began withdrawing their investment. Another instructive case is Andrew Luck. When Luck was drafted first overall in 2012, the Colts tied their entire rebuild to him, much like the Browns are doing with Sanders now. Luck's rookie preseason drew record ratings in Indianapolis, with local TV shares pushing into the 30s, staggering numbers for preseason football. But when he dealt with injuries in later years, the Colts' business model exposed itself. Between 2015 and 2017, when Luck missed 26 games, the franchise saw a 17% decline in season ticket renewals and a double-digit drop in local broadcast ratings. That decline wasn't just about losing games, it was about losing the quarterback that had been packaged as the team's identity. Sanders, if sidelined for any extended stretch, risks putting Cleveland into that same spiral, a team whose fortunes aren't just tied to wins and losses, but to one player's ability to stay on the field. Patrick Mahomes offers the inverse comparison. Mahomes sat out almost his entire rookie season behind Alex Smith, logging minimal reps until week 17. That decision slowed the business momentum early, but ensured that when he did take over, he was fully prepared. The Chiefs didn't lean on him to sell tickets or drive ratings in year one, which meant his absence didn't damage their revenue streams. By contrast, Sanders doesn't have that cushion. Cleveland has made him the face of the franchise before his first regular season throw. When Mahomes was inactive, the Chiefs leaned on veterans veterans to sustain engagement. When Sanders is inactive, the Browns see their numbers crater. The lesson is clear: patience can protect both the player and the business. But Cleveland and the NFL chose the opposite path, and now they're paying for it. There's also the case of Trevor Lawrence. Drafted first overall by Jacksonville in 2021, Lawrence entered with heavy hype, though not on the same media scale as Sanders. His rookie year was rocky, but he stayed healthy and logged every rep possible, finishing with over 600 passing attempts. Jacksonville's local TV ratings jumped by 19% that season, even though the team finished 3-14. The key was availability. Fans could tolerate the losing record because the storyline of development remained intact. Sanders' situation flips that script. Cleveland fans aren't worried about losing records yet. They're worried about not even getting to watch their rookie grow. Without reps, there's no narrative, and without narrative, there's no buy-in. That's why Lawrence's case demonstrates what Cleveland is losing. Even bad football can sustain engagement if the rookie is on the field. Injuries strip that away entirely. Beyond the rookies, you can also draw comparisons to established veterans whose absences altered business outcomes. When Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in 2023 on the Jets' opening drive, ratings for Jets primetime games stayed high early but dipped in local markets by 28% as the season wore on. Ticket resale prices in New York dropped by nearly 40% within 2 weeks of his injury. That situation mirrors Sanders' in miniature. Rodgers had been sold as the face of a new Jets era, just as Sanders has been sold as the face of Cleveland's. Once removed, the business model faltered. The difference, of course, is that Rodgers had a Hall of Fame resume to fall back on, while Sanders is still unproven. If one player's injury can cause that kind of measurable business decline before his career even starts, it speaks to how fragile the NFL's marketing strategy around him really is. One of the most telling comparisons comes from Deshaun Watson's rookie year in Houston. Watson entered in 2017 with strong college credentials, but was not immediately hyped as a national ratings draw. By mid-season, his breakout performances had pushed Houston into primetime relevance. When he tore his ACL in practice, the Texans saw a 31% drop in ticket resale value and one of the sharpest local TV declines of that year. Houston fans disengaged quickly once their young star disappeared. Sanders' case aligns almost exactly, except the timeline is accelerated. Watson built his hype on the field before injury pulled him away. Sanders built his hype in college and preseason promos, and then the injury hit before the regular season even began. That means the NFL's investment didn't even get to pay off once before it began to unravel. When you line up all of these cases, the contrast is stark. Other rookies and stars either had time to build momentum before injuries derailed them, or were sheltered by franchises that managed their development more cautiously. Sanders, by contrast, was thrust into the spotlight immediately, marketed as a ratings guarantee, and then sidelined before he could deliver. That sequence creates a unique kind of backlash. Fans don't just feel disappointed, they feel cheated. They were promised a product, Sanders as the Browns' savior and the NFL's new ratings machine, and the injury undercut it before it began. That's why boycott language has surfaced so quickly. It's not just about Cleveland's win-loss record, it's about fans feeling like the league sold them a story it couldn't sustain. Even in terms of pure performance projections, the historical comps show what's at stake. Rookie quarterbacks who miss significant camp time often struggle out of the gate. Jamarcus Russell, though a cautionary tale for other reasons, missed extended preseason reps in 2007 and never recovered. Carson Wentz, who missed much of the 2017 offseason with injuries, saw his completion percentage dip nearly 7 points compared to healthy stretches. Sanders risks the same trajectory, a sluggish start, not because he lacks talent, but because his timing with receivers and grasp of NFL speed has been delayed. When that sluggishness translates into losses, fans don't forgive the circumstances. They blame the player and the franchise. And when the player is also the face of a league-wide marketing push, the blame extends upward, creating the panic we're already seeing at NFL headquarters. Put simply, Sanders' injury matters more than most rookie setbacks because the stakes were inflated before he ever took a regular season snap. RG3, Luck, Lawrence, Watson, Mahomes all provide data points that show how absences and availability shape both football and business outcomes. But none of them combined college stardom, media hype, and immediate franchise ownership the way Sanders has. That's why when you compare across eras, the league's reaction makes sense. This isn't just a player missing camp, it's a linchpin of the NFL's 2025 narrative stalling before the season even starts. And when narratives collapse early, so do the numbers. To really grasp why the NFL is uneven easy about Shedeur Sanders' injury, you have to step outside the football field and look at the layers of business that orbit every quarterback who becomes a national storyline. For decades, the league has thrived on attaching its financial machine to quarterbacks who double as celebrities. Sanders was set up to be the next in that lineage, but his absence has forced advertisers, sponsors, and fans to reconsider their investment before it even fully began. The numbers and reactions tell the story. Start with television. Networks had already identified Sanders as a viewership multiplier. Amazon's streaming broadcast of the Browns' preseason opener didn't just outperform past Cleveland games. It set a record for the company's highest-rated preseason matchup to date, drawing a 34% spike compared to the average for that slot in 2024. That jump wasn't fueled by die-hard Browns fans alone. It was powered by a crossover audience of college football followers who had watched Sanders transform Colorado into a national talking point. Those viewers tuned in expecting to see the same spark in Cleveland. When injury news spread, the curiosity factor evaporated. Local Nielsen data from Ohio markets showed an 18% dip in ratings the following week when Sanders was inactive, and national broadcast partners quietly adjusted their marketing language around the Browns' next slot. For a league that treats every tenth of a rating point as dollars in the bank, that swing in viewership was not small. Ticketing tells a parallel story. The Browns had projected sellouts for their first 4 home games, banking heavily on Sanders as the draw. Even preseason tickets, often the hardest sell for any team, had been moving at levels not seen since the height of the Baker Mayfield era. StubHub reported that average resale prices for Cleveland's opener were up 112% year over year once Sanders was announced as the starter. But within 72 hours of his injury report, that momentum reversed. Prices for week 1 of the regular season slid from a high of $289 down to $186, and the volume of listings spiked by nearly 40% as season ticket holders looked to unload seats. That's a clear sign of fan hesitation. No team wants to see ticket holders cash out before the season even starts, and no league wants its most hyped rookie tied to a shrinking market before September. Merchandise provides another layer of context. In July, Sanders' jersey was the second best-selling rookie item in the NFL, trailing only Caleb Williams. He moved an average of 2,500 units per day, with fanatics reporting particularly strong sales in non-traditional NFL markets like Denver, Boulder, and even Los Angeles, where college football fans had carried their loyalty over. But after the injury, those numbers cratered. Daily sales fell by nearly 38%, pushing Sanders out of the top 5. To put that in perspective, a drop of that scale represents an estimated $3 million in lost retail revenue over a single month. When fans stop buying jerseys, it isn't just lost clothing sales. It's a signal that they're no longer attaching themselves emotionally to the narrative being sold. For the NFL, that's the kind of data point that sets off alarms. Sponsors, too, had begun staking campaigns on Sanders' presence. Reebok had announced a multi-year endorsement deal earlier in the summer, banking on Sanders to carry its re-entry into the football market. Local Cleveland businesses had structured marketing pushes around his debut. Even national sponsors like Pepsi and Verizon had quietly included him in regional ad buys targeted to Ohio and Colorado markets. Now, those plans face disruption. Advertising analytics firms note that companies often hesitate to roll out campaigns tied to athletes dealing with injury uncertainty. Every day Sanders isn't on the field increases the likelihood that brands will pivot to safer faces, leaving both the Browns and the NFL with less leverage in negotiations. The sports betting industry offers perhaps the most concrete example of how quickly this injury rippled outward. In the week leading up to Sanders' debut, sportsbooks reported Browns-related handle up 46% compared to the same week in 2024. Prop bets on Sanders' stat lines, passing yards, completions, touchdowns, represented one of the highest rookie volumes ever tracked. But once the injury update hit, those bets dried up. DraftKings reported a 42% drop in Browns-specific handle, while Caesars noted that wagers on Sanders over-unders had all but disappeared. For a league that now openly partners with sportsbooks and treats betting as part of its engagement model, those numbers matter as much as TV ratings. If a player's absence can cool an entire betting market, the league takes notice. And then there's the fan sentiment sentiment, which may be the hardest to quantify but is often the most visible. The hashtags tell part of the story, and Protect Shedeur, or Boycott NFL, and Cleveland Collapse all trended regionally within hours of the injury news. Younger fans, particularly those who had followed Sanders from Colorado, expressed frustration at what they saw as the league overexposing him too early. TikTok videos criticizing the NFL's handling of rookie quarterbacks drew millions of views in just days. Reddit forums dedicated to both the Browns and the NFL lit up with threads debating whether fans should even watch preseason games if the league wasn't going to prioritize player health. While not every fan who tweets about a boycott follows through, this kind of online discourse shapes perception, and perception in turn affects ratings, ticket sales, and merchandise. It's also worth noting that Cleveland isn't a typical market. The Browns fan base is loyal but long-suffering, having endured decades of quarterback turnover and front office instability. Sanders was supposed to be different. Not just another experiment, but a generational reset. When that reset falters before it even begins, fans don't just shrug, they harden. Local radio call-ins reflected this almost immediately, with fans saying they might hold off on investing in season tickets until Sanders proved he was durable. That's not the kind of conversation the franchise wanted in August, and it's certainly not the kind of messaging the NFL wanted spilling out nationally. The broader business environment adds even more pressure. The NFL entered this season needing a new wave of stars to carry ratings as Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and other stalwarts faded into retirement. Patrick Mahomes remains a ratings juggernaut, but the league knows it can't rely on one or two names forever. Sanders, with his college following, social media presence, and charismatic style, was packaged as part of that next generation. If his momentum stalls before it begins, the league risks overexposing Williams as its only rookie ratings chip, leaving markets like Cleveland, which had finally found relevance, back in limbo. Everywhere you look, the data aligns with the same theme. Sanders' absence doesn't just hurt Cleveland's offense, it disrupts the NFL's entire ecosystem of engagement. TV numbers dipped by double digits the week he sat. Ticket resale prices collapsed by nearly a third. Merchandise sales fell by millions. Sports betting handle dried up. Sponsors began to hesitate. Fans began to vent. These aren't abstract concerns. They're measurable business problems. And in a league that prides itself on being bigger than any single player, the irony is clear. One rookie quarterback is already moving numbers in ways the NFL cannot ignore. Looking forward, the real weight of Shedeur Sanders' injury isn't what it means today. It's what it sets in motion for the months to come. Injuries in August have a way of echoing through September, October, and beyond, not just in the win-loss column, but in the economics of the sport. For Cleveland, the questions revolve around Sanders' development curve and the team's ability to remain relevant in a brutally competitive AFC North. For the NFL, the stakes are national. Ratings, sponsorships, and the broader marketing strategy built around Sanders as one of the league's crown jewels in a new quarterback era. Start with the Browns' football outlook. Missing half a week of first-team reps might sound like a hiccup, but the reality is compounded. Quarterback development is cumulative, and every lost snap builds on itself. If Sanders returns in time for the regular season, he will do so with at least 20% fewer practice reps than most rookie starters. That difference is likely to show up in his Week 1 efficiency. Analytics firms that track rookie quarterbacks suggest that every 50 missed practice throws can result in a dip of 2 to 3 percentage points in completion rate over the first month of the season. Applied to Sanders, that could be the difference between a 63% completion rate, which is competitive, and a 60% rate, which often places a rookie near the bottom of the league. Small margins, but in an AFC North defined by elite defenses in Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati, those margins decide games. The domino effect continues into wins and losses. The Browns' playoff odds, already slim in sportsbooks at plus 340, slipped to plus 420 after Sanders' injury news. That line movement represents more than just better emotion. It reflects algorithms recalibrating team efficiency without a full-speed Sanders. If he struggles early because of lost reps, Cleveland could realistically start 1-3 or 2-4, records that would make postseason contention far more difficult in such a loaded conference. And when playoff odds drop, fan engagement drops with them. A season that was supposed to be defined by rookie excitement quickly risks turning into another year of frustration, and that's the exact scenario the NFL hoped to avoid when marketing Sanders as a franchise-changing storyline. Projecting beyond football performance, the business implications stretch even further. If Sanders' return is delayed or his play is visibly affected by the injury, the Browns' home attendance could suffer long-term. Already, resale prices for the opener dropped from $289 to $186 after his absence. If early season results confirm fan fears, you could see mid-season ticket prices dip into double digits, something Cleveland hasn't experienced since the late stages of the pre-Baker Mayfield era. The ripple hits concessions, parking, and in-stadium merchandise. A projected $5 million in lost revenue from preseason disruption could balloon to $15 to $20 million if regular season demand collapses. Multiply that across national TV contracts, where broadcasters pay for ratings tied to stars like Sanders, and the league itself feels the strain. Fantasy football and gambling markets also forecast trouble. Sanders entered drafts as a sleeper pick in the 11th round, but his average draft position has already slipped to the 14th. If fans lose confidence in his health, his engagement footprint shrinks. Fewer fantasy players invested in him means fewer weekly viewers tuning in just to check on their roster. Sports betting handle has already shown a 42% decline for Browns wagers in the week following his injury report. If that trend extends into the regular season, the NFL's official betting partners could see tens of millions in lost volume. While those numbers don't cripple the league outright, they do send red flags to sponsors who want stable engagement tied to their investments. There are also sponsorship scenarios to consider. Reebok, which signed Sanders to help relaunch its football footprint, positioned him as a headline athlete for 2025. If Sanders struggles to stay on the field, Reebok faces the awkward task of explaining why its top football spokesman isn't visible on Sundays. Other sponsors like Pepsi, Verizon, and even local Cleveland corporations tied campaigns to his name. A delayed debut or sluggish rookie season forces them to recalibrate messaging, which often leads to reduced ad spend or campaigns being shelved entirely. That may not sound dramatic, but for the NFL, keeping corporate partners happy is as critical as filling stadiums. Every sponsor that feels burned by Sanders' situation is one more conversation league executives have to smooth over. From a broader perspective, the NFL's long-term strategy is what's really in play. The league is entering a transition era, with Brady, Breeze, Manning, and Roethlisberger gone, and Rodgers and Stafford in the twilight of their careers. The NFL has aggressively promoted younger quarterbacks to anchor national broadcasts. Patrick Mahomes is the obvious face, but one player cannot carry a league indefinitely. Caleb Williams in Chicago is a natural draw, but the NFL wanted balance. One rookie star in the NFC and one in the AFC. Sanders was supposed to be that counterweight. If his momentum falters, the league risks oversaturating Williams while leaving the AFC's new star slot empty. That's not just a storyline issue, it's a structural imbalance in how the league markets games nationally. The most concerning future implication might be the precedent set for fan reaction. The boycott language that surfaced after Sanders' injury may not translate into literal empty stadiums, but it reflects a larger frustration. Fans are tired of seeing young quarterbacks sold as saviors only to watch them stumble, either from mismanagement or injury. If Sanders becomes the latest in that line, fans may disengage more quickly from the next hyped rookie, eroding one of the NFL's most reliable business strategies. Star-driven marketing depends on belief. Once belief erodes, selling the narrative becomes harder. Even if Sanders returns quickly, the season could play out in ways that damage both his reputation and the league's storyline. A rusty start, 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in his first 3 games, for example, could shift the conversation from future star to rookie and over his head. That perception, fair or not, would stick, especially given how much hype preceded him. Fans rarely consider context like missed practice reps when judging performance. They look at box scores, wins, and losses. If those disappoint, the momentum lost in August could snowball into a narrative collapse by mid-season. On the other hand, the best case scenario still comes with risks. If Sanders returns and plays well, it will be seen as validation of his talent, but the injury scare has already injected doubt into fans and sponsors. Even if he thrives, the NFL may hesitate to market him as aggressively, wary of repeating the cycle. cycle. That hesitation could slow his ascension into the league's top marketing tier, which was supposed to happen this year. Ultimately, the future implications boil down to risk management, something the NFL has always claimed to control but cannot fully dictate when injuries strike. For the Browns, the risk is wasted development time and another lost season. For Sanders, the risk is being judged not on his talent but on how quickly he can recover from a setback. For the NFL, the risk is financial, structural, and narrative. The possibility that their investment in Sanders as a ratings anchor fails to yield returns and instead damages fan trust. This is why the league is panicking, not because an oblique strain is catastrophic in isolation, but because the timing, the marketing, and the expectations make it catastrophic in context. Injuries don't just take players off the field. They reshape seasons, alter business models, and fracture narratives. And in Sanders' case, all three of those consequences are already in motion. When all of this is stacked together, the picture becomes clear. Shedeur Sanders' injury is more than just a practice setback. It's a crack running through the foundation of the NFL's 2025 storyline, one that exposes how fragile the league's business model can be when too much weight is placed on a single rookie quarterback. In Cleveland, the cost is immediate. Missed reps, lowered playoff odds, ticket demand sliding, and teammates forced to adjust to uncertainty. But the ripple doesn't stop there. It spreads outward to the league office in New York, to national broadcasters, to sports books, to sponsors, and even to casual fans who had invested their time and money into watching Sanders succeed. This is why the word panic isn't just dramatic framing. It's a reflection of measurable consequences. Viewership, which spiked 29% during Sanders' debut, plummeted once he was sidelined. Ticket resale markets collapsed by nearly a third in a matter of days. Jersey sales that had been driving millions in retail revenue dropped by almost 40%. Sports betting handle, one of the NFL's most important new revenue streams, shrank by double digits. None of these are small fluctuations. They are warning signs that the league's marketing gamble on Sanders was both powerful and perilous. The irony is that the NFL has always prided itself on being bigger than any one player. That line has been repeated for decades to explain why the league thrives even when superstars retire or falter. Yet here, in August of 2025, one rookie quarterback has already proven capable of moving the needle in ways that defy that principle. When he's on the field, millions more tune in. When he's sidelined, millions tune out. That dependency is both a compliment to Sanders' star power and a red flag for the NFL's long-term strategy. No league wants to appear vulnerable to the health of a single 22-year-old rookie, but that's exactly where the NFL finds itself. For Cleveland fans, the frustration runs even deeper. This franchise has lived through decades of instability at quarterback. Sanders was marketed as the end of that cycle, the player who would finally give them both wins and national relevance. Now, before he has thrown a regular season pass, the dream feels interrupted. The fan base is left to wonder, is this just bad luck, or is it another chapter in the Browns' long-running quarterback curse? That question isn't just about football, it's about trust. Every lost rep chips away at the belief that this time will be different. And so, the league faces a dilemma. It must decide whether to continue pushing Sanders as a national ratings anchor or to temper its marketing in case further injuries slow his rise. Both options carry risk. Push too hard, and the NFL risks fan backlash if Sanders falters. Pull back, and the league risks losing one of the few rookies capable of moving national numbers in a meaningful way. Neither path is comfortable, and both prove just how much the NFL has riding on a single player who hasn't even completed his first training camp. The closing reflection here isn't about whether Sanders will recover from an oblique strain. By all accounts, he will. The issue is what this episode revealed, that the NFL's economic engine and storytelling machine are more dependent on rookies like Sanders than they want to admit. It showed that fans, sponsors, and media partners are willing to shift their dollars and attention in real time based on one injury report. And it proved that even in a league built on parity and depth, the narrative around one quarterback can shape the perception of an entire season. That's why the panic is real, and why the term boycott has surfaced so quickly. Whether or not fans truly walk away from the NFL over Sanders' absence, the mere fact that the conversation exists signals a vulnerability the league hasn't had to face in years. Sanders' future will determine not only Cleveland's trajectory, but also how the NFL handles its next wave of stars. And that leads leaves us with the questions that matter most. Did the NFL gamble too much by making a rookie quarterback the centerpiece of its marketing before he had proven himself on Sundays? And if Sanders' season stalls, will fans actually follow through on threats of a boycott? Or is this just another flare-up in a league that always seems to weather the storm?